And now, for our next conversation, please welcome Julie Strauss-Levin as she interviews the host of Levin TV, FNN's Life, Liberty, and Levin, and the host of The Mark Levin Show, Mark Levin.
Good morning, CPAC. How is everybody today? Excellent. So you all saw that video. Should I not be incredibly proud of this man, my husband? I am. So Mark, you know, every night when we're home together, we talk about so many different things. And people always ask me, what do you talk about? You're dealing with all sorts of current events. You talk about history and Constitution and so forth during your day and my day. No way can you talk about this at home. And of course, we talk about family a lot. But the truth of the matter is, we do talk about these subjects. So I think it's a really good idea for us to sit here and share with thousands of our closest friends on this Saturday morning the kinds of topics we talk about. But first, let's talk about when we go to your book signings, because those are really some of my favorite times. It is absolutely amazing when we go to book signings, no matter where they are in the country, whether it's out at the Reagan Library, which is an amazing treat, or all the way up on Long Island, believe it or not, where there's such a blue state as New York. People stand outside, they wrap around the building just to see you. And it doesn't matter their age, their ethnicity, it is such a range of people. Why do you think people are so motivated to hear you?
First of all, let me tell you how proud I am to be sitting with this brilliant, beautiful wife of mine. I think there's still millions of Americans who love their country, who love their freedom, who love their Constitution, and they see it being eroded. There are millions of Americans who are looking at TV and they can't believe what they see. There's millions of Americans who believe in all the amendments to the Constitution and the entire Constitution. And they are sick and tired of people, self-appointed media types, the left, the Democrat Party, tenured Marxist professors telling us what's wrong with America when we know, as a matter of fact, through our ancestors, and many of you have fought for this country, that this is the greatest place on the face of the earth, not because we say it, but because it is.
Hallelujah. Absolutely.
I mean, when I write my books, look, I don't get much sleep. You may have noticed that.
I can attest to that.
She can attest to that.
Neither do I then.
When I write these books, I'm writing these books to try and explain American history, to try and explain the philosophy behind our principles, to try and excite Americans to the cause. And let me tell you what the cause is. The cause is nothing less than saving this republic. We are at a precipice right now. We're at a precipice right now. We have a president of the United States who I don't think is a philosophical conservative, but he does conservative things. And he is a president who sees the danger of the left. We have a president who understands North Korea, Iran, China, Russia, like no previous president since Ronald Reagan. We have a president who understands the cradle of human existence, where it came from, Israel, Jerusalem, the Middle East. And you have a president who has said, like no other president, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and by God, I'm saying it's the capital of Israel. And not only that, I'm putting that embassy there, and I'm putting it there in May on their 70th anniversary, whether the Palestinians like it or not. And this is what we talk about around the dinner table.
Exactly, exactly. All right, so let's talk about Israel here for a moment.
I can't take my eyes off of her.
So, no, seriously. But you need to. You
Being
need
honest.
to, like, focus out here
Yes.
for a moment. So, people may know because they listen to your radio show. We were in Israel in May with our family, and it was the most amazing experience. We had a bus. It was all 11 of us just seeing the country from head
Wandering
to toe.
Jews in Israel.
Exactly, exactly. You had never been to Israel, and before you went, people would say to you, Mark, I can't believe you've never been to Israel. And they'd say to me, Mark's never been to Israel. He needs to go. We went. You broadcast from there, and it was such an amazing experience to be sitting next to you as you broadcast, and you spoke to people that were so important in explaining the history of Israel. But I want you to share with everyone here what you thought it would be like going to Israel, and then actually what it was like when you were there. How did it make you feel, and how has that stayed with you?
First of all, despite what's being taught to our children in public schools, in colleges and universities, this nation is a Judeo-Christian nation. That's number one.
Bravo. Absolutely.
And that's precisely why we're not a theocracy, because these are religions that went through Reformation. These are religions that work hand in glove with Western civilization. These are religions that respect the individual. You read about things in the Bible, you hear about things that took place in the Middle East, and actually go there and touch a place where Moses was, or touch a place where Jesus Christ was, or to look at how the Israelis have to defend their holy sites against terrorists, but then to look at how you have such a diversity of religions in Israel, even within the Jewish religion. It was spectacular. And it is a place of hope, it is a place of faith, and I would strongly recommend, if you can get there, that you go there. There's so much in common with the United States. There's so much in common with the United States. We are so bombarded with progressivism and the voices of anti-faith, the voices of big government, the voices of condemning American history, that you wake up depressed turning on the TV or watching what's going on in this country. The fact of the matter is, from time to time, you need to be rejuvenated. You need to be rejuvenated. And I want to say one other thing about this. All of you here, we are the first and the last line of defense for this country. We are it. And I want to say one other thing. I don't care if you agree with this president on everything or not. They're trying to take him out, and it's our obligation to defend this man and defend his office and to defend the presidency. And I must tell you, that not since Ronald Reagan have we had a man who is so serious about putting constitutional originalists on the courts. This is crucial. Not since Ronald Reagan have we had a man who is so serious about reining in the massive administrative state. We have Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, three branches of government. Somebody forgot to put the extra article in there for the bureaucracy. Well, this president, it doesn't have to be a philosophical issue with him. He understands it, he sees it, he's trying to address it. And he's spending half of his time trying to undo the disasters that Barack Obama put in place. Whether it's Iran, whether it's DACA, whether it's eviscerating the military, whether it's eviscerating law enforcement, sanctuary cities, these are all Obama creations, and we have a man in office who's trying to reverse course. And this is what we discuss at breakfast.
Exactly. We haven't even gotten to lunch when we eat lunch, which is pretty rare that we get a chance to do that. So you just talked about and said a lot of things, and I'm trying to think in my head how to organize, the follow-ups, because there's so much material here and we don't actually have that much time left. we all talk a lot about the Constitution. But I want you to focus for a minute.
The Democrats never talk about
Well,
that.
they do, but they do, and they say it's either a living, breathing document, right? So we need to just update it every afternoon, right? Or it's so outdated, let's toss it. That's a whole nother subject for another day when we're at CPAC. But let's talk about the Declaration of Independence for a minute, because that doesn't get enough attention as we talk about maybe when we have like our morning tea, which by the way, we never have. So talk about the Declaration. Why is that really the document? Explain that.
The Declaration of Independence is the most concise, formal articulation of Americanism. The men who wrote the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson did the first draft, but there was a committee that included Franklin and Livingstone and others. So there were several drafts of the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence, the language in the Declaration is borrowed in part from the language in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which was adopted by the Virginia Assembly about a month earlier. Both documents are based significantly on the Second Treatise of Government, written by John Locke, who was a great writer of the Enlightenment. And John Locke was asked when he talked about liberty, the civil society, respect for the individual, all these things that are articulated in the Declaration. He said, well, where can this take place? You know, it's not Europe or anything like that. And he said specifically, that place, America, over there, that's where it can happen. Well, why did they say? Because it's a clean slate. Every time you hear people say, well, in Australia they do this with guns, and in Scandinavia they do this with taxes, and in Europe they do this with health care. No. We're America. We're different. We don't have all their baggage.
And we want to be different.
And we want to be different.
We want to be different.
And it's very interesting. At the turn of the last century, at the great start of this progressive movement, which I say is the bastard child of Marxism, and it is, the progressive movement attacked the Declaration. Its intellectuals attacked the Declaration. When President Obama used to cite the Declaration, he took out the parts about God. The Declaration talks about natural rights, God-given natural rights. You know who else talked about that? Aristotle, Cicero, Sidney, on and on and on. The great minds of democracy, the great minds of liberty. How can it possibly be that in the United States we understand right from wrong? France, you understand right from wrong. You don't get right from wrong from government. You get it from somewhere else. How do you know about morality? Benjamin Franklin, right over here. This is why, at the turn of the last century, they attacked the Declaration of Independence. Woodrow Wilson would attack it and attack it and attack it. And then there was a president who came soon after Wilson. And his name was Coolidge.
Bravo.
And Coolidge went to Independence Hall, stood where Wilson stood, and defended the Declaration of Independence and the principles. Now, do you know why? Sorry, honey. I do this too. I filibuster. Do you know why?
True.
Progressivism is incompatible with our founding principles. Progressivism is incompatible with limited government, separation of powers. Progressivism is antithetical to liberty and to republicanism. And that's why I said earlier, we have to draw the line, and this is the battle line we're in now. The left defines the terms of this debate every time. We've got to fight it. Now we're defending the Second Amendment? Why are we defending the Second Amendment? The slaughter that took place in Florida was a failure of government at the local level, government at the federal level. And while we're defending the Second Amendment, we have to defend our right under the First Amendment to have a different view than those who are attacking the Second Amendment. And the irony is, they don't give a damn about the Constitution or any of the amendments. They talk about we need common sense reform. $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities. Is that common sense? $21 trillion in fiscal operating debt. Is that common sense? $1 trillion a year in deficits. Is that common sense? Not securing the border in the nation state. Is that common sense? Judicial tyranny. Is that common sense? Administrative tyranny. Is that common sense? They can stick their common sense.
This is before we've even had dessert, folks. So you can imagine where we go from
Oh, we
there.
never miss dessert.
Yeah, exactly. That's extremely important. You talked about the amendments, Second Amendment, and that has had a lot of conversation lately. The other thing you talk about, because the left always says, we don't need this, we don't need that. And you very correctly have referred to the first 10 amendments as not being a Bill of Needs, which is what the left keeps saying, but you say it is a Bill of Rights. These are the Bill of Rights. So tell us, we don't have a lot of time, and I have a couple more questions, but if you can just succinctly just jump in there on why it is called the Bill of Rights and not the Bill of Needs.
Look, the Constitution, when it was sent to the states, was going to be defeated. That's how ingrained in the old colonies was the idea and concerns about central government. It was going to lose in New York, it was going to lose in Virginia, and it was going to lose in Massachusetts. Those are three big states. Madison contacts Hamilton and Adams because the state assemblies are saying, we want changes. And they promise, ratify this Constitution, and when the first Congress meets, we will add some changes. So a number of the states, when they ratified, also sent comments or suggested amendments. When the first Congress met, they were pretty much ignoring what they had promised to the states. James Madison stood up, elected to the House of Representatives, and as a footnote, he defeated James Monroe to be elected to the House of Representatives. He stood up on the House floor and he said, we made a promise and we need to carry through on this. Long story short, he headed a committee. They came up with 17 amendments. They sent it to the Senate. They whittled it down to 12. The House agreed to the 12. They sent it to the states. The states adopted 10 of them. Your Bill of Rights. There would have been no Constitution if there hadn't been an agreement to what became known as the Bill of Rights. And really what we ought to call it is the Bill of Individual Rights. They're individual rights. They're your rights.
Of course, Nancy Pelosi and everybody on Capitol Hill think it's their individual rights to be well guarded, to have all the police escorts, to have the motorcades, the same with Hollywood, right? But everybody here, we don't get those same rights. We don't need the guns. We don't need this. We don't need that. So that's
and
how they always
this idea that now we debate the Bill of Rights as if we're debating some regulation. Well, you don't need this and you don't need this. That's why for years I've been saying it's the Bill of Rights, it's not the Bill of Needs. And it's very, very interesting to me. So let me get this straight. The only part of the Bill of Rights that is sacrosanct, that is pure, that cannot be addressed ever is freedom of the press. All the rest of it's up for grabs. And then they tell you, we only had muskets when we had a Second Amendment. Well, we only had pamphlets when we had the First Amendment adopted too. So should we get rid of network TV? Should we get rid of all these things? How moronic.
Well, I do say we should get rid of CNN, MSNBC, and all the networks. But that's just my opinion.
Although I think they're getting rid of themselves, aren't they?
Well, not soon enough, not soon enough. So we have very little time. There's so much conversation about immigration and immigration reform. My personal opinion is, first we should talk about what's right about our immigration laws, because there's a lot right about them. We're a very benevolent country. The immigration law is very benevolent. Several years ago at CPAC, you said, we are a country of citizens. We're not a country of immigrants. I think everybody in this room agrees with that. Explain quickly what you mean by that so everybody else can.
How can you be a nation of immigrants? We allow immigrants, our ancestors were allowed into the country under certain conditions. with certain requirements, and they had to assimilate into this country. They wanted to assimilate into this country. They escaped one kind of persecution or another. My ancestors didn't come here carrying Russian flags, demanding a damn thing. They came in here and they got freedom. And that's what they wanted, and that's what they got. And they wanted to learn English. They wanted to assimilate into the society. They wanted to be a part of the culture. Instead, we actually have members of Congress who defy the citizenry. A nation of citizens, not immigrants, who defy the citizenry, who defy their own constituents. They spend more time debating the fate of illegal aliens than they spend debating the fate of the American citizen. And so years ago, right here at CPAC, I said, we have dreamers too, you know. Those are our kids. No country can survive with open borders. None.
None.
No country can survive without its culture. No country can survive without assimilation. We have a big problem in this country. Not only isn't the Constitution taught in school in English, how do you expect people to understand it if they don't adopt English in the first place? So we're going to lunch and we're going to continue this discussion.
Yeah, and I was going to say the next time we're at CPAC, we'll tell you what we talk about at Sunday brunch, but that's another long conversation.
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what a blessing and honor it is to be here every year, to be here with you, you folks who travel here from all over the country. Let me also tell you, there is hope. It's a very difficult battle. It's a daunting battle, considering how many instrumentalities of society and government the left controls. But we stand together. There are tens of millions of us who are true believers in this nation. And let me tell you something. We do have a president of the United States. You can say what you will, who loves this country, who loves its history, who loves its people, and we need to stand with him because, again, they want to take him out over our dead bodies.
One final thought. Here's one final thought for you. One final thought. More than 50% of the attendees to CPAC this year, and I think it's over 15,000 this year, are under the age of 24. Now, if that doesn't give you hope, right? Awesome.
And I trust every one of them, with an AR-15.
Exactly.
What do you think about that?
Exactly.